morning, everyone. Governor Kenneth E. Mapp and Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Osbert E. Potter.
Good morning. Please be seated. Lieutenant Governor, I want to first start by saying good morning to the wonderful people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. On January 5th, Lieutenant Governor Potter and I assumed office in this wonderful government, in this wonderful community. On January 18th, we were asked and had a meeting with the officials of Hess Corporation having to do with the shuttered oil refinery on the island of St. Croix. Our purpose, or I believe our intent in this meeting, was to get a good handle on what Hess's plans were with this shuttered refinery. December 2014, the 30th legislature, and in its wisdom, voted to reject a proposed operating agreement between the then ABR and Hovensa. At the meeting in January, my interest and the Lieutenant Governor's interest was how would Hess settle its claims with the government and the people of the Virgin Islands. The claims at the time resulted in some $40 million for a settlement on the environmental issues, approximately $14 million for suspended pilots, and then some percentage that should occur after a sale as a commission. As you all know, Hess advised us that they had some timelines and that if a sale could not go through, they anticipated that even the very $40 million owed to the government of the Virgin Islands, they would use to shutter the refinery. The meeting came to a rapid close, and the following day, on January the 19th, I appeared before the people of the Virgin Islands, advised them of the tenets of the meeting, and directed the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands to begin foreclosure proceedings of the secured lien that the government held on the property at Estate Hope. On several occasions, persons and members of the legislature encouraged me as governor to meet with persons who had some interest in purchasing the South Shore refinery. As many of you know, I refused to engage in the bartering of the sale of the refinery and made clear that that is a responsibility of the Hess Corporation to find a buyer, to make a decision about the plant, and to be able to tell the people of the Virgin Islands how it would resolve its financial obligations to the territory and the environmental impacts to the island. In August of 2015, I received a phone call from one of the attorneys representing Hess Corporation, advising me that Hess had, in fact, identified a buyer and wanted to set a meeting with me to introduce that buyer to me. On September 8th, with members of my cabinet and representatives of the government, we had that meeting in New York City, where Hess Corporation introduced us to a group of individuals, business persons known as ArcLight. The Hess company detailed what the tenets of the sale would be, and again restated what resolutions of the financial obligations would occur following the sale. As I reported to the people of the Virgin Islands following that meeting, Hess advised that the sale transaction was valued at $190 million. The government of the Virgin Islands could expect to receive $40 million under its secured lien, and the government could then go off to the bankruptcy court. They would be doing a bankruptcy sale. The government could go off to the bankruptcy court and fight for its $14 million of the pilot that was suspended, its additional 14 of the pilot that became due in October, and at that time, given the 190, the 35 million that would have been due the people of the Virgin Islands for its commission. I advised the folks at Hovensa that they still, and Hess Oil, that they still had not risen to the occasion. that they had not arrived at a place that the government of the Virgin Islands would be willing to do business with them. And so on September 14th, the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands filed a suit in the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands alleging breach of Hess's contractual obligations to operate a refinery facility to provide jobs and economic inducements to the territory until the year 2022. I will leave the numbers to the pundits, but I'm told that the media ascribed that the minimus of that suit was about $1.5 billion on behalf of the territory. Shortly thereafter, on September 15th, Hess filed a Chapter 11 petition for the sale of the storage facility and cloaked to protect Hovensa, its partners both PDVSA and Hess Oil, in the suit. Filed a motion in the federal court seeking that the suit filed by the Attorney General should be moved and consolidated with the bankruptcy proceedings. In addition, while all of these issues were taking place, the legislature of the Virgin Islands, since January, did accede to our request for starting a suit, to have a civil suit against Hess and its partners, and appropriated $1 million for that transaction. In the pendency of all of these issues, the government decided that it would seek the assistance of a legal team that could actually provide some financing for a civil suit against Hess Oil. There's no question why we would do that, because in a suit against such a corporation, the question is who have more dimes in their pocket. I would like to commend my Attorney General, Mr. Claude Walker, for bringing to us the law firm of Cohen and Milstein, whose point person, Attorney Linda Singer, is here, that was able to provide the resources, but more importantly, the capacity, the knowledge, bankruptcy counsel, to join the government's team to take on these issues, which are wide-ranging. The government put together a transaction team, actually two teams, a litigation team and a transaction team. One to begin the discussion of an operating agreement, and one to deal with the managing of the litigation against Hess Oil. The legal team was headed by our Attorney General, my Chief Legal Counsel, Emile Henderson, Attorney Peter Hebert, Attorney Linda Singer, my good friend, Attorney Joel Holt, and Commissioner Val Collins. We also, on the transaction side, brought some members of the financial team, and we hired the firm of Gaffney, Klein and Associates, who is an energy consultant and economist in the field of energy, so that we could clearly understand what are the tenets and changes that have been occurring in the energy industry globally, and what does the asset on St. Croix mean to the ever-changing climate in the energy industry, and how could the people of the Virgin Islands well position itself to articulate and negotiate an effective operating agreement. In this process, the authorized bidders by the bankruptcy court was ArcLight Capital and Buckeye. I had two meetings individually with my team where I was present with both companies. And I must commend the folks at ArcLight who ultimately decided that they would be the partners in which the government of the Virgin Islands wish to do business with, because ArcLight did business smart, did business well. ArcLight brought real partners to the table, and ArcLight isn't broke by any means. I think after this session, we're going to ask you to finance some of our debt. It's really a $15 billion funded entity, owned tremendous amount of assets in storage and terminal facilities. But ArcLight realized in its conversations with the government that we had an interest beyond just a storage and terminal facility. And so ArcLight, headed by Jake Earhart, who's here, and one of his partners, Evan Schwartz, that participated in this process, brought real players to the table. They brought Sinopec, the largest oil refiner on the planet. Sheldon Pang is here representing them. Sinopec owns 35 oil refineries globally and other offshoots of oil production in the business, and buys tremendous amount of its oil from the Latin American countries. It is a firm out of China. They also brought to the table a commodities broker, Freepoint LLC, and Daniel Hedge is here representing them, and really put together a presentation to the government on how we will not only use the storage capacity that exists on the South Shore, but how we're going to be able to look at the entire South Shore area and pursue other business elements and opportunities. So really very quickly, and upon the selection of ArcLight as a partner with the government, there's 13 million barrels of capacity for storage at the St. Croix site immediately. The total capacity of storage is 32 million barrels. At the selection in Miami, at our Miami meeting, and the government's intention to do business with ArcLight, Sinopec signed a 10-year agreement with ArcLight to take 10 of the 13 million barrels of storage capacity immediately. Freepoint immediately followed and took 2 million more barrels of that immediate capacity. So out of the 13 million barrels that exist today, 12 million is gone. This means that ArcLight is going to be investing over $125 million in CapEx improvements to get an immediate other 13 million barrels of capacity available and have clients for those capacity and begin the process of expanding its capacity facilities there. This morning can only be described as really two things happening. In January, I announced that the people of the Virgin Islands had reached the end of its line with the Hess Company, that we were in divorce proceedings, that we had won the House, and we wanted to know when Hess would leave, and that the divorce would be amicable or it would be contentious, but a divorce it would be. As you know, Hess individually filed a civil suit against the government of the Virgin Islands, contending that the government of the Virgin Islands owe it $184 million in tax refund claims, and PDVSA, Hess's partner, has filed a similar suit saying that we owe them the same for a total of $368 million. Out of the New York meeting, I asked the representatives of PDVSA that I would be very interested in meeting with the president of the country of Venezuela to begin to discuss some of these issues, because we obviously want some level of a global settlement. As you know, the government of Venezuela is in the midst of an election. Attorney Peter Hebert contacted the State Department, and I was cleared to begin to engage with the government of Venezuela on issues relating to its business on St. Croix. On Tuesday, I believe that was November the 9th or 10th, the former Venezuela ambassador to the United States flew into St. Croix and had a 2-hour session with me in Government House. We began to talk about a lot of long-ranging issues, but specifically this issue of the tax claim that PDVSA has filed. We had a subsequent meeting with other representatives of PDVSA here on St. Thomas, And I'm pleased to inform the people of the Virgin Islands that as part of a global settlement, Hess Oil has signed to retract and drop its tax refund claim against the Virgin Islands in the amount of $184 million. And after the December 6th election in Venezuela, we are expecting and have been advised that the government of Venezuela will drop its tax claim against the government of the Virgin Islands as well. In consideration of they removing those tax claims, the government of the Virgin Islands will drop its civil suit against the companies. Now, on to the closing, on to the resolution. As part of the sale transaction with ArcLight, and I'm very pleased to have ArcLight as a new partner, and we're going to have some of the folks speak to you, the government's value of settlement and going forward. So I'm going to combine all of it. The government's stake out of this transaction is valued at a little bit over $800 million. Immediately, the government will receive upon the closing approximately $220 million in cash. There will be another $9 million set aside for some pending litigation between the former counsel that represented the government on the environmental issues. And in this entire process, I learned that Venezuela is one of the larger exports of bitumen, but we call it tar, a very significant commodity for paving streets and roads. And you know, we have that big issue in the Virgin Islands. And so our new partner, ArcLight, is putting another $6 million on the table that will build a bitumen facility at the Jovensa site, which allows the government of the Virgin Islands, it will be done in the name of the government of the Virgin Islands, allow the government to import at least 100,000 barrels of bitumen to provide to our paving companies for construction of roads in the territory. Now, this is important because currently our paving entities pay about $110 per barrel to land that commodity in the U.S. Virgin Islands. This facility will allow us to land it around $34. And so we thank ArcLight for taking the responsibility for that part. In addition, there's another $30 million that will be set aside for the cleanup of the Jovensa site. Our operating agreement calls for a 2-year assessment by ArcLight and its partner to determine what provisions of the plant will be utilized and what provisions will not be utilized are required to be dismantled and removed from the territory. ArcLight will obviously sell those metals and scrap and will be entitled to keep the first $5 million of the proceeds from the dismantling, and after $5 million, the government of the Virgin Islands will share 50% of the proceeds of anything after that. The Hess Corporation is required to have a wraparound insurance policy that if in the dismantling we find some unexpected contaminations or anything of that nature, that we would be able to draw from that pool, that policy, for the continued cleanup of the facility. The ArcLight will also provide up to $15 million worth of electricity to Hess for the continuation of the pumping of the groundwater cleanup process that is now ongoing at the site for its continued cleanup. I want to commend Commissioner Don Henry from the Department of Planning and Natural Resources and our partner, the Regional Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Ms. Judith Inc., who has been working closely with the government of the Virgin Islands as we get through the environmental issues concerning the plant. ArcLight is also paying $90 million into the bankruptcy to make sure it reimbursed the creditors, and Hess parent company, Hess Oil, has assumed the $55 million of obligations of the pension program of the employees that retired from Jovensa so that they can be assured and confident that there will be no disruption in their retirement benefits coming to them and they being paid. The agreement provides as well that 122 of the homes at the Hess site will be transferred and the title deed will be transferred to the government of the Virgin Islands, as well as the community center and the vocational technical school at the site. 330 acres of land to the east of the refinery will also be deeded to the government of the Virgin Islands, and some provisions on the portions of that land we do intend to put wind generations as part of our ongoing effort to infuse renewable energies into the production of electricity in the territory to bring costs down. Already, ArcLight has seen the business opportunity and have discussed an interest in putting an LNG, or a liquid natural gas facility, at that site. If that should happen and they pursue that opportunity, we can tell you without dispute that, again, the cost of electricity will significantly fall in this territory. And the opportunities that we've been provided here is giving us the option, and we're going to utilize the option, where we're going to begin new power generation on the south shore of St. Croix, so that we can phase over a long period of time generation from the Richmond plant and move production to the industrial part of the island. They will provide $500,000 annually for charitable contributions, of which $100,000 must go to scholarships. We have changed, for the purposes of this contract, the requirement of residency to ensure that a person must demonstrate that their business or themselves have been living and operating in the Virgin Islands for at least 1 year to be able to be considered a resident of the Virgin Islands for the purposes of working at the facility and being on the management team. ArcLight has committed to work with the University of the Virgin Islands, and the operating agreement calls for a partnership with UVI for, again, developing the talent and the skill and the training for our people of the Virgin Islands to be able to become a part of this growing business. I'm trying to make sure I have not, yes, one more important aspect. Under the operating agreement, ArcLight must provide a minimum, I believe, of 3 months of fuel supply of the territory needs for the 3 islands that will be available through now the rack system. They will purchase it from their clients and make it available for sale at the wholesale rack. This will be jet fuels, gasoline, diesel, propane, and other fuels, so that we can do away with the importation of fuel in the territory with ISOs and the expensive costs that we have borne in fuel in the territory in the last year. And so it is our expectation to see the price of fuel in the territory drop as a result of that access to that resource. Really, within the first 2 to 3 years, and the members are here and you will be able to question them, we believe employment will run up to about 200 because of the cap improvements, the expansions, and getting all of the issues clear. Today, I am going to submit to the legislature of the Virgin Islands this proposed operating agreement, and I am calling the legislature into session on December 17th to consider and append its ratification or disapproval of this proposed operating agreement. I want to, again, be very clear in thanking the members of the government team, the Attorney General, Linda Singer, Attorney Joel Holt, Peter Hebert, Val Collins, for the work that they did in putting this process together. I want to thank ArcLight. I want to thank Sinopec and Freepoint for really wanting to do business in the Virgin Islands. And Sinopec can speak to the value of the area at the South Shore that has, beyond a oil or petroleum or energy piece, but now an availability for doing transshipment on the South Shore, and subsidiaries of Sinopec is very interested in how they're going to stage and put that infrastructure in place to make that happen. And so in the long term, this agreement, which is expected to go for 25 years with a renewal option of 15 years, we believe that in the long term, you are going to see substantial jobs on St. Croix. Let me point out, in addition, that the lease for the submerged lands at the South Shore We had leased those lands for $1 a year for the 60 years that Hess has been here. So we got $60 worth of rent for 60 years worth of living. But, you know, inflation does what inflation do well. So part of this operating agreement provides that the lease for the lands and the exclusion of the permits, because the permits were in that $1 a year as well. The permits here will be whatever the market value of the permits ought to be, but the lease for those submerged lands will now be $150,000 a year, or $6 million for the 40-year period. As Governor of the Virgin Islands, I am happy to be able to stand before the people of the Virgin Islands with my Lieutenant Governor and present this package to you, the people of the Virgin Islands, and say to you that $800 million is a far cry from $40 million. I want to thank the 38th Legislature for rejecting the ABR deal. We came into office on the premise that we would represent the interests of the territory and look out for the interests of the people of the Virgin Islands, and we are committed to doing that and will continue to do that. For those persons who wish to question the operating agreement, we invite you to do that. We invite proper scrutiny from the legislature and ask any questions that you may feel is important to ask. I am going to personally, over the next number of weeks, make myself available on a number of community talk shows that the people of the Virgin Islands can clearly ask me whatever questions they would like to ask about this agreement. If the legislature should ratify this contract, and we have advised, I have spoken with the Senate President on a few occasions and have advised him that December 31st is a very critical date, but if they are able in their wisdom to determine that they wish to ratify this operating agreement, then the closure will provide the monies to the government that I have laid out here. I want to again say to the people of the Virgin Islands, and I was told not too long ago that I am the grandfather of Virgin Islands politics today, not because I'm an old man, but I do have my senior citizen's card, but because I'm the oldest person in terms of time on the political stage, starting at 27. My caution to the territory is this is not the resolution of our financial woes. We must look at this as a family that came into some dollars, but we can't take a vacation. We can't go out and buy new clothes. We can't everybody get a new car and spend. This, a good portion, if not all of this money, is pretty much accounted for in the budgets. The imbalance, our fiscal and structural imbalances in our budget, these dollars will help us get through those days as we grow and build the economy. These dollars will prevent the government, if used wisely, from going to the financial markets to borrow money for operating expenses for the next 3 to 4 fiscal years. That is a significant opportunity to grow the economy. Yes, this administration is on record and will commit and provide increases to the salaries of our government workers pursuant to their collective bargaining agreements, and we have said we would be doing that even before announcing these dollars. So we will continue with our obligation to make that happen. But I must caution the people of the territory that this is not a time to forget the fiscal challenges and believe that we simply have a lot of dollars, because in the scheme of our government finances, while $200 million or $235 million is a good bit of cash, it's not the kind of cash we need. And so we must continue to work to grow the economy, to reduce our costs, to have folks invest in the territory and grow our revenues. And as we're able to do that, as we're able to achieve that, then we are going to be able to get our new suit, to get our new pair of shoes, to get rid of the clunker. So that we want to be very, very clear that this is not play money. This isn't squander money. Yes, Christmas is here, but we're going to shop with the money that was in the Christmas envelope from last week. This is not this year's Christmas proceeds. So I will now open the floor for questions. I would like to invite Jake And I'd like to invite Sheldon to come to the podium, introduce Jake from ArcLight, Sheldon from Sinopec, and ask you to make a few words to the people of the territory.
Thank you, Governor. Again, my name is Jake Earhard. I'm a partner with ArcLight Capital. We are the leading investor behind LIMETREE Bay, who is the proposed acquirer of the former Joventa site. I'm here with Sheldon, representing Freepoint Commodities, and also Sinopec, who is the minority investor as well with us in LIMETREE Bay. I don't do press conferences for a living, so I think I'll be better served answering your questions. I just want to briefly say that the governor and his entire staff, in our opinion, was one of the hardest bargainers that we've had to encounter over the 15 years that we've been in business doing transactions across the energy landscape. The team did a tremendous job really improving the terms of the deal for the islands and for the government. And I think at the end of the day, we struck a very fair and reasonable transaction. It was a very collegial undertaking throughout the entire process. And we are very excited and very happy to be here. This is really just the beginning for us. It's been a lot of work to get to this point. We have a lot of work to continue to do. We're very sincere and earnest about the strategy we have to roll out that you're going to hear a lot about today and in the coming days as the operating agreement is discussed with the public and with the Senate. You know, that was the fruit of a process that, as I said, was very much a collaborative one with the entire team, the governor's team, and one that I think we're all very happy about the outcome of. I might have Sheldon make a couple brief comments, and then I think it will make sense for us to be able to answer any questions that you have.
Sheldon?
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Governor. I'm here together with my colleague Dan to represent Freepoint Commodities and our partner Sinopec. Freepoint Commodities, as Governor mentioned, is a global energy merchant. We have a significant presence in the Caribbean area. For example, we are the exclusive fuel oil supplier to PREPA in Puerto Rico, and we continue look to expand our business in this area. We've had, through Freepoint and its predecessor companies, have had business relationship with Sinopec for over 20 years. And since the Sinopec's subsidiary Unipec, its procurement company was formed in 1993. And today, my partner, Unipec's general manager in New York, for crude oil, due to a foot injury, could not be here, so I'm here representing both companies. But we've, together with Sinopec, visited St. Croix twice, and we really see the strategic value in making investments in this community. Sinopec, as many of you probably know, is, as Governor mentioned, is a Fortune 3 company, one of the 3 largest companies in the world. And they import roughly equivalent to 2/3 of the U.S. total oil production on a daily basis. And this area, the Americas, Latin American, the Caribbean basin, is a strategically growing area identified by Sinopec, and they wanted to double their business in this region within 5 years. So this 10-year commitment is a start, and we certainly look forward to a win-win situation to growing our business further in this region, together with the government and with the people of Virgin Islands. Then we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sheldon. At this time, I'm going to open up the floor for any questions relating to the operating agreement or this transaction. Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. The deal sounds like a good deal. I got a question for ArcLight. Of course, ABR brought a suit against ArcLight, stating that ArcLight stole the deal underneath its nose. Any comments on that? Apparently, you were their partner prior to this agreement sometime last year to back up the efforts in obtaining the refinery. What do you have to say about the suit?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I guess I'd very simply say that this is probably not the best forum for discussing ABR. I think I would simply say that we believe that suit to be entirely without merit, and look forward to demonstrating that through the legal process.
And then in relation to the jobs, you said immediately about 80 jobs will be provided. What is the ratio in relation to local employment for those 80 positions?
I might bring one of my colleagues up to help answer some of the more technical questions. Evan Schwartz, also with ArcLight, can speak to the exact details of the local versus non-local commitments.
So for the site as a whole, 80% of the jobs have to be USVI residents, and then there's also a minimum requirement for management in addition to that, so that the senior people at the site are also also have representatives of the Virgin Islands.
Okay, and the governor spoke of 200 jobs coming available within the span of 2 years. Do we expect that to increase as the contract continues?
Yeah, so the agreement has a certain minimum job requirement that's been out in the public and is part of the operating agreement. As the governor mentioned, we've made a commitment to spend at least $125 million, likely substantially more than that over the next 2 years. And as part of that process, we'll be bringing a lot of contractors in to help us execute that expansion that we're undertaking. And again, the same residency requirements will be applicable to that work. From that point forward, we certainly expect the operations of the facility as we grow it beyond that 13 million barrels, expanding it to 26, and then beyond the work that we're looking at around the idled refinery units, some of the other expansions that the governor mentioned, will certainly require more employees than that minimum baseline number. So our expectation is that it will grow over time. And we basically structured an agreement where there is a minimum amount, but as I said, I think we expect to exceed that given the scale of the operations that we intend to be undertaking at the site.
And so just for the governor, Mr. Governor, in relation to the sensitivity, is it time sensitive, the operating agreement? Are you saying that the legislature should ratify it as soon as possible?
Well, we've, in our conversations with the Senate President before today, I've always advised the Senate that, when we knew that this was really gelling well, that December 31st would be the important date. To get it done, there are issues in terms of the continuation of the facility. As you know, the bankruptcy sale issues are in effect, and so the window closes, for all intents and purposes, on December 31st, 2015. And in my collaborations with the Senate President yesterday, we decided that the Senate is in session on the 15th and the 16th, and so that we would make the special call on the 17th. And I am just very optimistic that the senators, the members of the legislature, will have whatever information they deem is important and required, and whatever questions they would have, so that they can make an informed decision and would be able to do that in a timely basis. Barring any other questions, I'd like to thank you all for coming, members of the cabinet that are here. Again, I want to thank my transactional team. Thank you, Jake and Sheldon, and Evan, Daniel. Again, Attorney Joel Holt played a very pivotal role in this process. Attorney General, Mr. Claude Walker, thank you for your network. You're working out very, very well. We're proud of you. I want to hurry up and swear you in, so we have to get the legislature to ratify you, right? That's right. So we look forward to doing that. And again, Attorney Singer, for all of your help and all of your contributions. Let me just note that this would bring a finality to the issues with Hess and all of the litigations and all of the fees and bills that will go along with this transaction to a close. And so the issues with respect to the lawsuits are not included in the operating agreement. Those are things that we can do under my signature. And I know that Hess has signed its papers for the withdrawal of their income tax refund case. We expect in December to have that signature from PDVSA, and once that signature is received, then I will sign and direct the Attorney General to withdraw our case, and that will bring that global reality of the issues to a close so that we can move forward in a very positive and a very good business relationship. Thank you all, and I want to say happy holidays to the good people of the Virgin Islands. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I certainly did. Before Thanksgiving Day, I rolled my scale back 5 pounds. And after Thanksgiving, when I got my weight, I had still lost 2 pounds. So my fried turkeys went very well, and I want to thank Addy Otley for that competition on the radio that he had about how much did the turkeys weigh that I was frying. I was really very concerned that he was asking the people of the Virgin Islands to guess my weight, but he did not do that. So have a wonderful and a happy holidays to all. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone.